Hey everyone, welcome back to Ashes and Alibis, where we break down the most complex and controversial true crime cases one testimony at a time. Today we're digging deep into a witness who has become one of the most talked about names in the Karen Read trial, Brian Higgins. His role in the case, what he saw, what he didn't see, what he said on the stand, and what questions remain could mean everything for how the jury decides the fate of Karen Read. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's walk through exactly what Brian Higgins said under oath and what it might mean.
Shadows whisper in the night, lost souls fading out of sight. Echoes linger in the skies through the smoke of ashes and alibis.
First, let's rewind. Brian Higgins isn't just a random bystander. He's a Boston police officer, a trained investigator in his own right, and he knew both John O'Keefe, the Boston police officer who died under tragic and suspicious circumstances, and Karen Read, the woman accused of killing him. According to the prosecution, Karen Read struck her boyfriend John O'Keefe with her SUV in front of the Albert residence in Canton, Massachusetts in the early hours of January 29, 2022, and then left him to die in the snow. But the defense, they claim this was a cover-up, that John was injured or killed inside the Albert house, and that evidence was manipulated to frame Karen. And somewhere in this tangled web is Brian Higgins, someone who was in touch with Karen that night, someone who was at the party, and someone who, in the defense's theory, might have known more than he let on. So why does Brian Higgins matter so much? Well, for one, the defense is painting him as part of a group of friends who were all at the Albert house that night, a group they claim could have witnessed or even played a role in what really happened to John O'Keefe. Second, he exchanged multiple texts with Karen Read before and after John's death, including messages that some people say hint at something more than just friendship. Third, there's the question of whether he and the others coordinated their stories, whether these friends circled the wagons, as the defense puts it, to protect themselves while pinning the blame on Karen. So when Brian Higgins took the stand, everyone was watching. What would he say? Would he crack under cross-examination or stick to his script? Let's lay out Brian's account in his own words. According to Higgins, he says he arrived at Brian Albert's house sometime around midnight. Not exactly unusual for that group of friends who'd been out that night and decided to keep the party going back at the Alberts. There was a small gathering. Brian Albert, his wife, other friends, some say kids were asleep upstairs. They were having drinks, hanging out. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Higgins testified that he never saw John O'Keefe come inside the house. He says that to his knowledge, John never even made it to the door. But, and here's where it gets interesting, Higgins says he didn't see Karen Read either. He only knew she was supposedly dropping John off. He didn't notice anything unusual outside, didn't hear a car hit anything, and he didn't see any commotion. So according to him, if John was lying in the snow outside, he didn't know. But then comes the text. The defense grilled Brian Higgins on the stand about the communications with Karen before and after John's death. They exchanged multiple late-night messages, some more friendly than you'd expect from just acquaintances. In one of the most talked-about exchanges, they discussed plans for the next time they'd see each other. Some people point to flirty undertones, others say it's just normal for friends. The prosecution asked him if he had a romantic relationship with Karen Read. Brian Higgins said no, firmly. But did the jury buy it? It's one of those questions that will stick with people long after the verdict. And the defense wasn't shy about using these texts to push their theory. Brian Higgins was part of a close-knit circle who had reasons to hide the truth, and that his relationship with Karen complicated everything. In cross, the defense came hard for Brian Higgins. They wanted the jury to see him as evasive, cagey, not telling the full truth at all. They asked, did you ever go outside that night to see if John made it inside? Did you ever check your cameras? Did you see any lights, hear a crash, or hear Karen yelling? Again and again, Higgins stuck to his story. He didn't see John, he didn't see Karen, and didn't hear anything unusual. To some, he seemed calm, confident, and consistent, a credible cop with nothing to hide. To others, he seemed rehearsed. The defense wants jurors to ask themselves, how could you miss all of this if you were right there? Now, here's where it gets murky. And this is the meat of true crime, the what ifs. If Brian Higgins is telling the truth, then the state's story holds up. Karen dropped John off, struck him by accident or in anger, and left him to die. Brian just didn't know he was outside. But if the defense is right, if John actually made it inside the house, if he was injured in a fight, an accident, or worse, then Brian Higgins becomes a critical witness in a possible cover-up. Add in the rumors, the chatter about deleted messages, lost phone data, who was awake and who wasn't, and it's easy to see why people are obsessed with his testimony. When you break it down, the jury's job isn't just to decide whether Brian Higgins is likable or whether they think he's hiding a flirtation. It's to decide whether Karen Reed's guilt has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt. But in a case with so much reasonable doubt swirling around the driveway, the car, the cell phones, the conflicting stories, Brian Higgins is one of those linchpins. If you believe him, the prosecution's timeline holds up. If you don't, the whole thing could unravel. Brian Higgins' testimony isn't the only piece of this puzzle. Far from it. But it's one of the biggest because it connects the people at the party to the events outside. It connects Karen Reed to someone she was texting while her boyfriend was dying. If you believe the state, or already dead inside theory, if you believe the defense, it brings up uncomfortable questions about loyalty, secrets, and small-town friendships. And in true crime, sometimes the biggest clue is not what people say, but what they don't. So what do you think? Is Brian Higgins just a friend caught in the middle, or a key player in something far bigger, something darker that the defense says could explain how a healthy 46-year-old police officer ended up dead in the snow while his girlfriend became the prime suspect? We want to hear your thoughts. Do you believe Brian Higgins was credible? What do you think his testimony really tells us about what happened that night? Leave us a comment, share your theory, and be sure to subscribe for more in-depth breakdowns on the Karen Reed trial and other cases that keep us all asking what really happened. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and stay safe. This has been Ashes and Alibis. See you next time.
So much fun when the end is already here. You get to stop worrying about the future. The future is now.